Thanks very much for joining today. So like Colette said, I'm Leanne Tough, Senior GIS Analyst at the RSPB. And today I'm going to be talking about collecting and communicating citizen science data from my fairly varied early career perspective. So I'm going to try and sort of cater to both audiences today, because I know there's probably people in here who are practitioners who might, for example, have an Esri subscription, who just want some sort of inspiration about different things they can do. And then I know there might be some community members as well who just want to look at the sort of the bigger picture ideas about collection and communication. So I'm going to start today with a broad introduction to collecting and communicating citizen science, and then I'm going to show some citizen science projects to hopefully inspire you and give you some pointers on this topic, and then I'll sort of sum it all up at the end. So just an introduction to me. So I sort of started off in this space as a citizen science coordinator at the Ribble Rivers Trust, and I joined them after I left university. At that time, we had about 140 volunteers. They were doing riverfly surveys, like in that picture at the bottom, bat, otter, habitat and water quality surveys as well. And then after that, I joined WWT. So I did all sorts of things here, GIS related, not just citizen science. But like Colette was saying, if you've followed the Water Watch Collective for a while, you maybe recognise my name from the website. So I, alongside the help of Charlotte and Colette, built the Water Watch Collective hub and data portal. And then an opportunity last year came up to sort of join an organisation I've always wanted to work for. So I joined the RSPB in September. And here, right now, I don't work with citizen science data at all, really, but I work alongside lots of people who do. So I will show those later on. So I thought it'd be worth having sort of an intro slide about how it's sort of no coincidence that I've worked for 3 prevalent ENGOs that all use and value the use of citizen science. So as I'm sure you all know, nature conservation is a time-intensive, resource-heavy thing to do. And for my career experiences so far, nature conservation is done by organisations that don't have an abundance of time and resources. So citizen scientists, who can vastly increase an organisation's reach, play a very important role in amplifying conservation action. So why citizen science for nature conservation? So firstly, data generation. So the number of survey points can increase drastically with the help of citizen scientists, which you'll see later. And this could be via a bigger geographical area or a greater timescale. Secondly, boost the well-being of participants. So there is a lot to be said about the benefit citizen science can bring to the participants. In the groups of people that I've worked with, I've seen citizen science involvement decrease the feeling of loneliness and also give people a really great reason to be active in green spaces. Thirdly, political lobbying. So I recently learned that the RSPB has got more members than the 3 main UK political parties combined. And I felt like that is a really powerful tool for political lobbying. For you, it could be a line such as, this number of people care about this species or natural space, so why aren't you helping to protect it? And citizen science data, especially from those big projects such as the Big Garden Birdwatch or the Big Butterfly Count, do make their way into political lobbying campaigns. And then fourthly, community nature preservation. So getting more people out and about caring for nature does also bring communities together and helps more spaces and species be protected. So it's often local people who are protecting important nature sites that aren't represented by larger conservation charities. So on to the first half of the title of today's talk, so citizen science data collection. So there are a heap of ways you can collect data, and deciding how you're going to do that is sometimes fairly obvious. So if you need to kick sample a river, you need a kick net, or maybe the survey is really well established and you can use the forms they provide, like in the breeding bird survey. If you're setting up the project though, the decision can be difficult where to record the data. So it could be as high-tech as a custom web app. For example, like when the Rivers Trust launched their big River Watch, they had an app to go alongside it, which is how people were collecting data. Or you could collect your data with a free-to-use Google form. But hopefully through some of the examples I'll show later, you can pick up a bit of inspiration and some tips to help you make that decision. So on to the second half, data communication. So I've always thought that your first challenge is getting the right data collection method to suit the audience. Then your next and possibly biggest challenge is how to summarise and communicate what is being collected. I think this is often the sort of make or break stage, because this is where you do or don't keep people's attention and time for other survey years. And also volunteers do deserve to know that what their time has resulted in. So there are again lots of ways you can physically communicate your data, and this is not an exhaustive list. So having interactive maps and dashboards with things like Esri, Cartographer, Power BI, Leaflet, they're maybe the sort of obvious ones, but you can do lots of social media, webinars, newsletters, blogs, podcasts, arts, guided tours, and much more. And for more social surveys, which are sometimes a bit harder to summarise in communications, I've seen some really great examples of where the results are captured with art pieces. So this one on the right was done to capture the impact of a pop-up wetland that was built in Bristol's Millennium Square last summer. So again, hopefully through the examples I'll show now, you can pick up a bit of inspiration or maybe some tips about how you might communicate the data you're collecting. So now let's have a look at some citizen science projects to see all the things I've talked about in action and in more detail. So this was the first citizen science data collection and communication project that I did. So if you're not familiar with riverfly monitoring, it's a nationwide project where people go and survey riverflies in rivers, so aquatic invertebrates. And they're sort of called the canaries of the river. So different types of invertebrates have different pollution tolerances. So if you survey through the survey season and you've done it for a few years, you can sort of see what invertebrates you normally have. And if they change drastically, then you're likely having a pollution incident, and you can report that to people like the EA. So historically, at the Ribble Rivers Trust, people were collecting their riverfly surveys, they were putting it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then emailing that Excel form every month into an admin member of staff. Wasn't great because not everybody firstly liked Excel or had it, and the Excel sheet was a little bit buggy. I think it was really old. People couldn't see the historic data, so it was almost like data was being collected and just put in a filing cabinet and never seen again. So a task that I was given was to sort of digitize it, this process, and make a way for people to be able to actually view their data and learn more about it. So this is what it looked like. So on the top left, there was a survey form, and then on the bottom right, there was a dashboard. So in the data collection form, it had some sort of automatically calculating fields. So if you put your site number in, it would tell you your catchment and water body automatically. When you put the number of invertebrates that you had, it would do the riverfly score for you, which took away some of the human error. And then we had this dashboard, so you could look at riverfly values or scores for the catchment or just your site and look over time, which was a huge success. So I will say that straight off the bat, I know I've talked about Esri already quite a bit, and these are both Esri created things. So I will say that the majority of my career has been Esri based, so I am maybe a tad biased, but what I made here doesn't have to be Esri. So you could use something like Power BI, which is sort of a new thing that people often use, or you could do it with a Google form. So I just want to say that I'm going to mention Esri a lot, but if you don't have a license and you're never intending on, please look past that part of it and just think more about the wider things, like how the survey form was sent out, what it looks like, what the graphs look like. I used other free software things as well. So for example, I use Canva quite a lot for doing nice graphics and things. So doesn't end if you don't have Esri, don't worry. So for each of these projects, I'm going to talk about some pros, cons, and lessons learnt. So then for this one, as I've said already, that this is called Survey 123 is the name of this Esri product to make this form. That removed the data entry step, so it saved a lot of time. Data went exactly where it needed, didn't need that middle process. People could also instantly see current and historic data, which people enjoyed, and saw that their data was actually being looked at and used. And there was also instant data visualization for project managers. So we didn't have any more like, oh, I was going to use the riverfly data to assess a project, but I couldn't find it, so I didn't. It was all there for anyone to see. And I think as well that it did help with volunteer retention and satisfaction. So I know somebody made a survey friend because they had no idea that someone surveyed 500 meters down the road from them. or down the river, sorry. So they went out and surveyed with them. That's just the power of just having a map. So negatives, and you're going to see this one a lot, Esri products obviously cost money, so I have to put that there. And also this dashboard that I made, you needed a device bigger than a mobile phone for viewing. I think sometimes it was very easy for me to forget that I did all of this on a laptop because it was my job, but it's not other people's jobs, it's their sort of hobby. And most of them are probably looking on phones or tablets or things like that. So whatever you create need to make sure it suits the audience of who's using it. So for lessons learned, it was a big change from going from the sort of Excel emailed spreadsheet to this. So we did have this in the end, but I think if we'd have had simple and very clear instructions on how to use it and why we made this change from the very start, would have probably benefited people. I found change this in the end, and I ended up putting links to the survey form and dashboard in every communication I ever sent out, and that's so that people could find it, use it, and benefit from it. So it wasn't just sort of, I guess, like wasted exercise. And then something that I ran out of time to do was to take this sort of one step further. So ideally, I would have had some sort of community aspect to this. So like a chat forum, so people could share ID, etc., and sort of make a community. I know Facebook's often a quick one that people go to, but not everyone has that. So, and I wasn't a web developer, so I sadly couldn't build something like that. But that's something I would have wanted to do to sort of take this the next step. Okay, so moving on to the reason why we're here, the Waterwatch Collective. So this one is more of a communication rather than data collection project. So the Waterwatch Collective has its two websites, which hopefully you've seen before. So there is the Community Hub and then the data portal. The Community Hub is more like just like a website. It's got, you can see where there are groups, events, learn more about water quality, for example. Then the data portal holds some open source data sets that hopefully will grow. And this was, sorry to say again, made with Esri. So this was using something called ArcGIS Hub, which is like a website building platform, basically. So the one on the left here is the data portal. So you can see it holds some data sets in it. And then on the right is the hub, which has more descriptive things in it. So a good thing about this and using the Esri product was that you can do some really great integration of maps and data. So you can have a data behind the scene and then pull it out really easily and make some nice interactive maps, which is obviously Esri is a GIS software at the end of the day, or GIS company. So that's what they're known for. It's also very, you can produce attractive results, and it's also fairly simple to create. It's a bit like a plug and play kind of design. And if you do have an Esri subscription, then doing this is much cheaper than asking someone to build you a custom website. And it's sort of free to host online as well, so you don't have to pay for that or bother with all of that sort of stuff, which is beyond things that I know. Negatives though, again, like I said, Esri products do cost money, but if you do have the funding or the skill sets in your group, then it can be a good option. Or you could ask or try and get a custom built website or a Google site. Again, something like Canva's free. You can make lots of nice graphics. Google sites are also free. So the sports team that I play for, we use Google sites to advertise events and things like that. They're quite useful. And just a good line here from one of my colleagues was that when I asked them about sort of pros and cons of doing things like ArcGIS hubs, they said that you can do 85% of what they asked for, so the customer, but you can't get the complete amazing user-friendly product you could with a custom build. So if you ask Colette about this, she'll tell you as well that there was much more we wanted to do with these hubs. So have things like index sections of pages, let people write comments, but we were really constrained by what the sort of Esri product lets you have. So that's just a consideration with when you're building your version of this. Think about all the things you want to be able to do with it and which method suits best. And also we found it hard to track usage of this as well. So it's under a WWT website domain, but the way the tracking of that was done is that we couldn't really easily see how much this was viewed as opposed to the normal WWT website. So that was a bit of a shame, I guess, because we could have could have been great to find out really detailed things about like what people are clicking and what people are looking at for a long time, rather than just briefly glancing. So lessons learned, like I said, clear brief from the start if you're building something as big as this, like a full forward-facing website. That also helps manage expectations if you're also not the project manager as well, so you can say what is and what isn't possible. I think we could have done with a sort of larger test and feedback period. So again, if you're doing something similar, then maybe try and get it used by lots of people, because chances are they'll see something that you've not noticed, or something just won't make sense. And yeah, I think the data portal bit of it, I definitely think Esri was the right decision, because that's what it's designed for, to be a nice forward-facing website, and then have data behind the scenes. But maybe for the actual hub, possibly not best being Esri, because you are very constrained by what you can do, and maybe we should have actually looked at something more custom. Okay, so moving from Gloucestershire to Devon and Cornwall now. So these projects, the next 3 projects I'll show, aren't ones that I've worked on, but are colleagues' work. So cell buntings were once widespread and locally common across farmland in southern England. And after World War II, the population went into decline, and it was so severe that they were almost lost from the UK. So by 1989, there were fewer than 120 pairs recorded, and these were largely restricted to South Devon, mostly confined to coastal farmland between Plymouth and Exeter. So the RSPB has been involved in cell bunting conservation for many years, with the cell bunting project established in 1991. The RSPB research identified that all-year foraging and nesting habitat is the main issue for cell bunting survival. So with this information, the RSPB and others worked with wildlife-friendly farmers and other landowners across Devon and Cornwall to improve habitat. And this has been very successful. So there is 1,000 pairs were recorded in the last full survey, which was in 2016, which is 10 times the amount that there was when the project started. And there's even now a small population in Cornwall as a result of a reintroduction. But to help with the continued success of this species, the population needs to be monitored to ensure the population continues to flourish. So that is where citizen science come in. So the surveys that people do are carried out annually, and volunteers complete 2 visits to each of their chosen sites between April and August. So they record where they saw a cell bunting, what behaviour it was exhibiting, and any other farmland birds seen. And that's again done with an Esri product, sorry. That's survey 123 on the left here, but again, doesn't have to be. And then they have a map in a website, and then you can sort of select a survey square to sign up. And they also have results in interactive maps as well. So a huge benefit of doing this project and getting citizen scientists out surveying for cell buntings was that they are able to now produce annual population estimates. And the rare breeding bird panel, they typically received very few cell bunting records outside of their national survey years, and now they have a really robust data set. And the data that is being collected as well is going to help define the breeding range for the next national survey sampling strategy. Again, used Esri products, and they cost money. They also, so the people I spoke to about this said that you're always likely going to get paper submissions, so they did let people have that option. So you can't always fully automate everything and get rid of that sort of time constraint, I guess. And as with many things, internal resources did limit the development of the app. And the sort of a lesson learned, and something that they would want to do next, is that they would like there to be a full automation with the volunteer management system that the RSPB has. So the sort of databases talk to each other, so they can make sure volunteers are insured, etc. But resourcing again can be a major issue, and that is sort of constrained this. But I think the sort of overall for this project there has been a huge success compared to the amount of monitoring there used to be for cell buntings and how much there is now and how good the data set is. Okay, moving very north. So the rare invertebrates in the Cairngorms is a partnership between RSPB, BugLife, Butterfly Conservation, the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, Nature Scott and the Cairngorms National Park Authority. So they work to learn about and conserve 5 rare insects within the Cairngorms National Park. And these are the aspen hoverfly, dark-bordered beauty, pine hoverfly, small scabious mining bee, and the Kentish glory. So for the pine hoverfly, so again it is Esri, Survey 123 app collects data on the whereabouts, tag number, type, and condition of pine hoverfly rot holes. So that is where pine hoverfly larvae develop. So these rot holes have been created artificially in Scots pine dead wood. By monitoring the rot holes, they're better able to assess the population size of the last remaining population of pine hoverfly and monitor the release sites used as part of a captive breeding and release program. So there are several thousand of these rot holes across the park. So obviously keeping track of where they are and what condition they are in is vital. So that's one benefit of having all the survey sites in an accessible map. So apparently before this was done, there was some real confusion over some of the pine hoverfly rot holes and their tags and where they were and numbers of them. So they have a ArcGIS hub, so i.e. website, again, doesn't have to be Esri, but they have a website that has got information about the species, keeps people updated about the project, and advertises volunteering opportunities. So for the Kentish Glory project, they've got a map showing priority survey squares, and then when someone's interested in surveying a square, an email is automatically sent to a project staff so they can send up follow-up information on how to carry out the survey, risk assessment, and so on, and they can share that with the volunteer. So the person that I spoke to about this project said this automation saves a huge amount of time organising volunteer surveys and also gives volunteers a degree of clarity and independence when choosing survey sites to suit their location and physical abilities. So yes, the main positive of this one is a lot of time saved and reduce of confusion, and also the sort of data streamlining has reduced error. Again, Esri products costs money. And also they said that, which I think is quite an important point for lots of people in this space, I think. So they talked about it being quite difficult to get the exact data you want when using large number of volunteers. So they said that even with well-designed data collection sheets or apps, or whichever one you use, people have still got a sort of tendency to go their own way with how they record data and what data they are recording. But as a lesson learned and sort of on reflection, they said that this is probably due to communication. They said that they needed to make it very clear to people why we are collecting this data and what we are actually intending to do with the data. Then people understand better why we ask for the things we ask for in the right format, which I think is a really important sort of communication pointer there. And why I was saying that communication could be the make or break of a project. Okay, I like the name of this one. So this is called Project Puffin, which was also known as Pufferazzi. And this was a Puffin Diets citizen science project ran in 2017. So they had 602 people submit 1,402 photos of puffins carrying fish for their chicks in the UK's biggest puffin diet study. There's 11,150 prey items from 27 colonies across the UK were analysed to show for the first time the difference in food that puffins feed to their chicks in different regions of the UK over the course of the summer. So the results indicate a possible link between the type and the size of prey and the puffin population change. And this was published in the Journal of Avon Conservation and Ecology, which the link is on the right there, and you should be able to click it with the way I've shared this presentation. So they had a custom website add-in where people uploaded their photos and added metadata for each photograph separately. So they took the approach that a lengthy submission process probably made some people less likely to engage, but made sure that they got the information that they needed to do a robust analysis at the end. So the photos were all stored through Stackler, which provided links to what they called the puffineers, so they can click on them and analyse them. So just to break up my voice a little bit, I've got a video about how they did the analysis next, because I think it's quite fun to see. So the pros and cons for this one are a little bit sort of science focused because the results were sort of specifically published for a scientific journal. But they had really great engagement success. So like I said, they had 602 people submit 1,402 photos. So it enabled them to collect robust diet data at a scale that would have been simply been impossible using traditional labour-intensive methods. And it also reduced the welfare impacts of the puffins because you didn't have to go and get anywhere near them, just take photos of them. So for things that didn't go quite right, so they said that the photos were very opportunistic. So they were unable to design a sampling strategy that would provide good spatial and temporal coverage. So the majority of photos came from the 3 main colonies where people go to watch puffins. So that's the Isle of May, Farne Islands and Skoma. And they got very few photos from some regions that were particularly interested in, e.g. Orkney, because the colonies were not very accessible. We also had colonies where all the photos came from a very small window of time in the season. Because they knew that puffin chick diet changed across the season, that snapshot didn't really give the whole picture. And they also said that they really underestimated how much time it would take for paid staff to organise it and also for volunteers to do the analysis like I just showed you, which I think you can see is a very time-intensive process. But also to note, not an Esri-based product, which is good. But they learned a lesson from this, and so they know that which colonies are likely to be underrepresented, either overall or at a particular time of the season. So if they did do this again, or a similar project with other species, they changed the way the survey was designed and how they'd ask for people's time to make sure that the project is as effective as possible. Okay then, so to summarise, I'm just going to give a few sort of overarching themes from what I've just spoken about, and then some other sort of key takeaways that I've had from my sort of citizen science focused career so far around collection and data communication. So you don't need a complicated app. It doesn't have to be Esri, it doesn't have to be Power BI. Is that puffin one that I've just showed you there was a really successful project, and it used Excel. I volunteer with the Toad Patrols, which is quite a popular survey, and we do absolutely fine with Google Sheets. We don't need anything else. Communication and understanding your audience is the sort of make or break of your project, in my opinion. So firstly, you need to know your audience and think about your language, and that's both for collecting at the collection and communication stage of your data. So for example, when I was first a citizen science coordinator and the first person at Ribble Rivers Trust to be called that, some people were really confused by why I was calling them citizen scientists, because science can mean a lot of different things to different people. Most people just saw themselves as volunteers, whereas some people really love this sort of official sounding title. The language is therefore important, so you might change your language when emailing your volunteers who know the name of river invertebrates, but then people on social media might not know what an invertebrate is. The story you tell needs to be engaging and not just a complicated bar graph. Like with the Cairngorms project, people need to fully understand why and what data are being collected to maximise sort of return of good quality data. If you're doing any sort of communications around locations or sensitive species, you need to think about whether releasing that data is a good idea. So is it on private land? Will it increase the likelihood of a member of public will trespass to sort of look for that species or habitat, or will it increase a disturbance of a nesting site, for example? Communications need to be consistent. So this is something that I try to do for those surveys that are for a sort of specific time period, such as river flight monitoring. So I drip feed a few emails just to keep interest up outside of the survey season and sort of build excitement for the next season. And most importantly, I think you need to communicate the impact and the value of the volunteers' efforts. So you could so very easily lose interest in volunteers if they're made to feel used. So often I like to just put myself in their shoes and think, what would I like to hear if I was doing this? Another thing is to sort of be dynamic, so respond and adapt to feedback. So make that project work for your volunteers. So I know project managers have their own pressures to deliver, but citizen scientists at the end of the day are doing this for free. And then my very, very last point is that if your data can be open source, that is a major win. So make it easily accessible, let others learn from and use your data so we can all increase our conservation action and reach. So here are loads of links to all the things that I talked about, and there's my email address if you want to chat about this afterwards. So there is so much citizen science going on in the UK, and it's not just for, and abroad actually, not just the UK, sorry. And it's not just for nature. So, you know, talk to others in this space and grow your connections and knowledge, because the problems that you've encountered or the debates you're having have likely been encountered by lots of other people before. So that's me. Thanks very much for listening.
That's great. Thank you very much, Leanne. It's great to hear about all the different ways of presenting those data and of your experience of using, in this case, Esri, but knowing that you can actually take those ideas and use them in other apps, etc., as you mentioned. We've got a little bit of time now for any questions, so please do put them in the chat. Alex, have we got any to start with?
Yeah, we've got one to start with. Thank you. So this person asks whether you used Hub Basic, as is inbuilt with Esri subscription, to build your community hubs, or did you use Premium, which comes at an additional cost?
So the Waterwatch Collective is with Hub Basic, so that's the one you get with your license. The RSPB ones, I actually don't know, but I believe they're Hub Basic. I can't think I've seen any of the Hub Premium features on them. I think for us, when we were doing the Waterwatch Collective, I think some of the features that they had in Premium would have been nice. So having the sort of chat function, I think, was one of them. And I think you could organise events. I've never personally used it, so I'm sort of going off what they've told me. But I think the problem with WWT, which is sort of less of a problem where I am now, is that we didn't have many licenses. So I think we had to give out licenses to lots of people and have logins and things, which just makes it a bit of a bigger task. So we kept with basic, hub basic, what it's called.
Perfect, thank you. We have another question, and the person states that it was a really stimulating presentation, so thank you. And they then ask, what are your thoughts on using QGIS, which is free to use?
Yeah, I love Q. I used Q a lot. So when I was at the Ribble Rivers Trust, pretty much everything we did was QGIS based. It's great for mapping. And the only reason I don't use it right now is because we need the extra sort of things that the paid for software gives you. The good thing about Q is that, like I said there about, I think I mentioned somewhere about Leaflet, I think I've got the link to it there, is there are, and there's more than that, I've never really fully explored it, but there are open source ways of making interactive maps online. So I have done a few very sort of basic ones with Leaflet, and they're really good. So I definitely, if you've got QGIS and you now to use it and you want to make maps with it to put into websites or onto your own organizational website, then definitely all for it. Because yeah, like I said, open source is good, so that's why QGIS has got a big win in that one.
Thank you. Nothing else yet, but please keep them coming if anyone has a question.
Oh, I can come in with a question while we're waiting, Leanne. So you obviously this is open to people to look at on the websites, etc. What sort of feedback have you got from citizen scientists themselves about what they've seen, how they find using these different apps that you've created?
Yeah, so I guess the one I had the most sort of involvement with was the Riverfly one at the very start. That one was, with the release of that, was on the whole hugely positive, and I think that's just because it was taking, like I said, taking data that was never really looked at and putting it somewhere very easy to see. Like I say, someone made a friend from it. People could actually look at historic data. So there was sometimes people had surveyed it like 5-10 years ago and they'd never actually seen that data before. So that was really good. People could understand their site better and understand when they need to report a pollution incident. I think some people, I think that often, especially for when I was at the Rivers Trust, quite a lot of the volunteers were retirement age as well, people who didn't really want to have the sort of techie online part of it as well, which is also fine. So it's kind of trying to work, sort of bridge the gap between the two, I guess, and cater for both. So I tried to keep them as simple as possible in, I guess, all the other citizen science things I've done or thought about in the past, and trying to keep them as simple and easy to use as possible. And that's why Esri has often come up, because they are quite good at that sort of citizen science communication, data communication method. Trying to think of other examples. And I just realised I forgot to say actually that I said for the Riverfly one that hub now is retired, so you can't see it online. And the main reason for that is because the people who organised Riverfly also had this sort of, at the same time, had the realisation that their data should be publicly available and more interactive. So they've moved to Cartographer now, which is another tool. It's paid for software again. You pay somebody to build it. But yeah, they've moved to that now. So that's why that hub isn't online anymore. But you can still see all the same data in Cartographer, just in a different format.
Thanks, Leanne. We've got someone in the chat saying that they will contact BART to see if they can volunteer for them as a result of this. And then we've got another question, which is, when thinking about publishing the results of citizen science surveys, how do you deal with sharing permissions on the data? Is that covered in what you do before volunteers participate, or do you have to approach the volunteers again for permission to share data?
Yeah, I think it very much depends what you have. So if obviously there's data in the sort of more social science space, then that needs to be figured out before, definitely before, if you're starting to share what people are saying. If it's something like Riverfly, where it's a national survey, then it's sort of, I guess, set by powers above us that it's going to be put public. But if it's your own thing that you're making, then I think it very much depends on what it is and who is submitting it and what they're submitting. So if it's and where as well, so about if it's on private land. But if you were, for example, I don't know, looking for, thinking about frogs recently, looking for frog spawn in ponds and things like that, that is possibly an easy one to just say, well, that it's fine to go public. But you can definitely have that as a question at the very start. If you tell people they're going to participate, and when people are saying they're going to participate, tell them that this data is going to be published. I think make that very obvious. Because I guess to me, in my head, it's like, oh, it's really obvious that citizen science data probably will be published, because that's kind of the point of it. It's not using people to get private information, or but for other people it might not be so obvious. So I guess if you're really transparent about that from the start, then that shouldn't cause any issues. But I guess if you have data already and that's what you're thinking, and if it has personal information or on private land, then yeah, maybe you need to approach them or wherever the land is whoever owns the land. You might need to go back to them just to make sure. So I guess that's a pointer for planning a project, to make sure that is all settled and people understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a quick question actually, which was, when you talked about you designed it on a laptop screen and then it was quite small on a mobile phone or a tablet. What did people actually do? Did they take their own tablets and kind of manage, or did you find that they went out with, I guess, pen and paper and then submitted it separately?
Yeah, so the survey form, luckily, is completely compatible with any size. You have to have a smartphone. I guess that's the other thing as well. Some people don't have smartphones, so some people did still do the data collection. I think I had, I'm trying to remember now. I think I had a paper version form that people could fill out, and people made their own as well, and had all the boxes they needed to fill out, and they input it when they got home. Or some of them still sent them to me if they didn't have any sort of anything other than like sort of an older style phone. For the dashboard though, so I think one of the last things I did when I left was I did make a version that was on for websites that if you did look at it on different sizes, it would automatically like move the boxes around and compress it. So that is one of the, again, not to fully sing the praises of Esri, but that is one of the good things that they have, is that they do have, there are tools within dashboards where you can make different versions, and it knows that when you look at it on a mobile, you'll show a different like structure. So I think I got rid of most of the bar graphs and only had maybe one map and one graph. So then if people looked on a phone, they wouldn't see the full thing. But I just had to write a comment saying that you're seeing a reduced version due to the format that it's in. But if you're doing that beyond Esri, then I guess you just have to think about how it looks. Like if it's on, I don't know, a Google Sheet or something, just think about how it, if it's more, you scroll down rather than across, things like that. I think it very much depends on what sort of software you're using. And I think websites have also got all their inbuilt stuff to make them look okay in different formats. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.